area. Josh Kidd needs a decent ball in. It's in! And Exeter City with Sam Nombe. Sops down to his ankle. Picks out Stansfield. That's the hat-trick. And that's what dreams are made of.
Hello everybody and welcome to Park Life, the official Exeter City podcast. My name's Tom Picillo and today we've got a lot to get through. City are top of the league, but how long can we stay there for? Well, I've got a few guests who might be able to help me answer that crucial question. So, without further ado, let's get straight into it. Coming up in today's show, I'm joined by EFL expert Gabriel Sutton, who's been keeping a watchful eye on Exeter City this season. I'll also be joined by City set-piece specialist Reece Cole to discuss how he's found the start of the season and to ask him whether he's fallen back in love with football. I'll also get the lowdown on Saturday's opposition, Leyton Orient, from Steve Nussbaum, the host of the Orient Outlook podcast. Finally, to celebrate 20 years of Trust ownership, I'll be joined by Julen Beer, one of Exeter City Football Club's newly appointed directors, to reflect on the past and discuss the future of life under fan ownership. Let's crack on then. My first guest is none other than EFL expert Gabriel Sutton. Gabriel, or Gab as I know him, has more knowledge of League One than any other person I know. Let's have a little listen to what he thinks of Exeter City's start to the season. Gab, welcome to Park Life. Thanks so much for joining us. I know you're a good sport, so I'm sure you know where I'm going to start. Predictions, of course. And I know it's early days in the season, and I know there's a long way to go, but you wrote that you expected City to finish 17th this season.
I did. And I'm going to say, I'm going to put the caveat in, there are people who had Exeter City going down as well. So yeah, no, I don't think it was an awful prediction in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, of course. But by that reckoning, I suppose it's probably fair to say that you're pretty impressed by the way the Grecians have started the campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really caught my eye is how well the loanees have started because Sinisalo, of course, is on a second-time loan, but he didn't really play much at Burton Albion in the previous season. So this is a little bit like a first-time loan for him, you could argue in some respects. And then it is a first-time loan for Ryan Trevitt, for Dion Rankin. And I've just been so impressed how these lads who haven't had senior football before have just slotted in seamlessly, and even someone like Reece Cole was playing, what was it, seventh tier football. So it's a massive jump, and I think you've got to credit. We've spoken about this before, Tom, the Marcus Flitcroft, the recruitment team, and I suppose I'm going to make myself a little bit unpopular with City fans in a way because I rate him so highly as a head recruitment, and I almost think your fans are probably thinking, well, let's keep this one quiet. Let's keep our little secret, like a bit of a secret side that only people have to know about. But listen, he's done an incredible job. I think Gary Caldwell's contacts have been so useful as well. So far, we're only 6 games in, of course. You've got to sort of caveat things with that, but wonderful start and top of the league as well. Got to enjoy that while it lasts.
Yeah, well, while it lasts, I don't know. We'll see. It's a great start to the season, nonetheless. And I was going to move on to talk about some of the transfer business that Exeter City have done. Obviously, the window's shut now. And I noted on Twitter that you were particularly impressed by the acquisitions of Dion Rankin and Vilson Asalo. But I also noticed that you were pretty much equally as impressed by the signings of the permanent players. Jack Aitchison, who came into the club. Zach Jules is a really good option as well.
Sure.
From a sort of well-rounded perspective, how do you think Exeter have fared in the transfer window, considering those who have left the club as well?
Yeah, and well, I think what's really interesting to me is that over the last feels like 5 or 6 years now, you've had such a stable squad where there's been pretty little movement, and you've been able to keep the group together. And it's felt like that's changed a little bit this summer because you've lost Nombe. Stansfield was on loan, although sort of felt a bit like your own player, I guess, in one sense.
He forever will be.
Yeah, forever will be, of course. Archie Collins and Josh Key as well have been so crucial for the last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, I think those things are a few big players departing, and I think you needed to get that recruitment spot on, and so far you certainly have. Yeah, Jack Aitchison, I absolutely love his movement, and yeah, so I think that's yeah, I think it's a really exciting position. And then you even look at players who were there last season, like Alex Hartridge, who you've just mentioned on my podcast, where probably had a couple of quiet seasons, you could argue, even while the team was really successful as a collective. And then he stepped up another gear and just seems to be so aggressive. And yeah, seems to be having a great season so far. So yeah, really impressive.
At Exeter City, we've sort of coined the term Coldwell Ball because I think we're sort of moving to a new identity that Exeter City are sort of playing under now. Obviously, previously, it had been the sort of Matt Taylor identity, which it's very similar in many ways to Coldwell. Both sort of three at the back formations, 3-4-1-2. It was under Matt Taylor. It's very similar, actually, under Gary Coldwell, but often we've seen this sort of lone striker up top, surrounded by maybe supporting wingers. It's slightly different in many ways to Matt Taylor, but how do you think that Coldwell has stamped his authority on the team, and how impressed have you been that he's managed to do it so quickly by recruiting the players that suit that system?
Well, I actually watched the fans forum Gary did before the start of the season when he actually went into a lot more tactical detail than I think I've ever seen a manager do at a fans forum, because I think normally managers give sort of fans the kind of the surface level answers, and then they keep the detailed stuff kind of under wraps. But actually, I thought it was really interesting to get some insight on the way Gary works, and I think you can tell that he has, on the one hand, he has a clear identity in terms that he wants sides to be really aggressive and play on the front foot. But also, I think he's shown that he's been able to adapt to circumstances. So he's shown that Barnsley, he did that example where Barnsley were at their best when they're pressing against the ball. And so what the sort of in principle the idea was last season against Barnsley was actually to give them the ball and sort of go against, play them at their own game. And James Scott, of course, was crucial to that. So I think he's shown the adaptability that he's got his plan A, but he's also been able to show that flexibility when required. And I think that's crucial for Exeter this season.
Yeah, totally true. And we spoke a little bit about this on your podcast, EFL Debate, but last week's victory against Burton Albion was City's fourth in a row in all competitions, that is, of course. How much do you feel the momentum will carry the team forward? So I spoke to Reece, and that interview is obviously coming up in this episode about the momentum. But how crucial do you think that it will be in terms of the games that are coming up?
Do you know what? I think I'm not an Exeter City fan, and the last thing I want to do is sort of tell fans how to think and feel about their club, because that's not the business that I'm in. But I would kind of, if I'm putting myself in your shoes, I would kind of imagine it's a case of just literally just enjoying the ride, soaking in the atmosphere, enjoying Exeter City being top of League One. By the way, how often does that happen? Just kind of enjoying that sort of journey and just seeing where that momentum takes you. Now, there's a world in which there's that sort of crest of a wave effect, and you end up surprising a lot of people and possibly end up challenging for the playoffs this season. But I also think there's just something to be said for just kind of in enjoying the ride, I guess, and maybe not putting too many expectations on it. I think if there's a season where the fan base can kind of let go a little bit and be pretty comfortable that you're on track so far, early days, to get the points required to make sure that you stay up, I think there's maybe less pressure on this season, and I think that's a really exciting thing to be embraced.
Well, up next then for Exeter City is a game that I think most fans will want to take 3 points from. City host Leyton Orient at St James Park on Saturday. An Orient side that have seemingly struggled with the step up to League One football this year. I think a lot of people expected a little bit more from Orient this season. Why do you think it hasn't quite worked out for them?
I think there's been a lot of bad luck along the way. I don't think, apart from the Stevenage game where they were sort of outfought on that one, I think Richie Wellens admitted that he didn't have enough physicality and experience in his side. He kind of went with the players. He played brilliantly, produced one of the best performances of his reign against Cambridge last week. He kind of trusted that side to do the same again, but maybe they fell short against the, as I say, the physicality and experience of Stevenage. But then if I go back to games before that, at Wickham they played with 10 men. There was a controversial dismissal. I'm sure there was another game where they played pretty well and didn't quite get the rewards. So I think they've been not too far off this season. And I think they've had a lot of games where they've probably been better than maybe the results suggested. So although Orient are 20th in the table, I think it would be wrong to underestimate them because I think in any given game they can really carry a threat. So yeah, I would say watch out for them.
Well, in that case, do you think that they could get the kickstart that they need on Saturday? It's a similar thing sort of happened last year when Burton Albion came to SJP under Dino Marmaria in his second game in charge, and they took all 3 points from that one. Do you think Leyton Orient stand any chance in this one?
Yeah, I certainly do. I mean, let's not forget that when they played Cambridge, Orient, I think, had a point to their name. Um, and Cambridge were top of the league with maximum points. And I do think that the table at this stage of the season, you've got to be a little bit careful. I think there's some teams up there at the moment that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be up there. And I think that it works the other way around, where there's some teams down there that are maybe better than the table suggests. So I think it's important to give it time to level things out. So I certainly wouldn't think Exeter City should go into this game with an air of sort of superiority, because if they do, they'll get punished, and that's probably not the mentality that they've gone into this season with in the first place. So yeah, that's how I feel about it, really.
And I know this is a bit cheeky. Where do you think we'll end up come the end of the season? And I hope it's higher than 17th.
It might be. I'll give you some leeway there, Tom. I think it might be a little bit higher than 17th. But again, I think it's we'll give it to the 10 game period just to see where things level out at. I think Listen Exeter have given themselves a fantastic platform, established a lovely points tally to make sure that to get towards that 50 points total as quickly as possible. Yeah, it might be a couple of places higher than 17th, but you know what? This is Exeter City's second season in League One. They hadn't been at this level before since I want to say the early 2010s. So that's I think it's a relatively new level for the club. To do what you've done is so impressive. 17th, I still think that would be a decent season, but yeah, maybe you might be able to climb a couple of places from that.
Well, we'll have to see. But thank you so much for joining me, Gab. Incredibly insightful, as always, it must be said. And we'll head over to EFL Debate, of course, to listen to my little feature on that as well, where we talk a little bit about Exeter City and the rest of League One as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Gab. And, I'm sure that we'll see you back on the podcast at some point in the future.
Yeah, cheers, Tom. Take care, mate.
Great insight, as always, from Gab. Up next, though, we've got another player interview for you. Reece Cole's journey through football has been a bit of a whirlwind, to say the least. From Championship Brentford to non-league Hazen Yedding, then back into the Football League with Exeter City. You're going to love this one. Reece, welcome to Park Life. Thanks so much for joining us. I think your journey through football is one of the more compelling stories of those in the EFL. You started life off at Brentford, making an appearance in the Championship. Loan spells across the EFL, non-league football and Scottish football followed before you ended up in Scotland with Dunfermline. I think it's fair to say that you didn't really enjoy your football as much in Scotland, so you moved back to England to play non-league football. Now, yeah. I suppose, after a ring from Gary Colwell, you seem to have fallen back in love with football. What does it feel like to be back, and are you loving football once again?
Yeah, no, definitely. From where I was last season to this season, it's like a complete contrast of football life, really. Like, I was working and I was only playing part-time, so I was training Tuesdays, Thursdays, and then this year it's just football. I haven't got to worry about anything else. It's just my mind's on football, which is all I've wanted to do as a kid. And I think probably I needed that time away to like I've said in previous interviews before, that I needed to get that love back for the game. I sort of fell out of love with it. I didn't enjoy it as much as what I should have been doing. And yeah, no, it's just brilliant to be back in it.
Yeah, what's it like falling out of the professional game, having to, I suppose, integrate yourself with the rest of the working population in many ways, get a regular working job, and then find your way back into professional football? That sounds like an incredible task, but it's something you've managed to do.
Yeah, I knew the whole time when I was playing part-time and working, I was like, this isn't for me. This isn't what I should be doing or want to be doing. So it was just a matter of time really until I got back into it. But I had to get myself right physically, mentally, and really have a long, hard think about what I wanted to achieve and what I want to do getting back into the professional game.
Yeah, and when Gary gave you that call, obviously, he rang you up, clearly trusts you, managed you previously in his managerial career while you were at Partick Thistle. And I suppose, was it the manager, the city, the close-knit team? What was it that attracted you to Exeter as opposed to other clubs?
Well, it was actually the other way around, to be fair. I rang the gaffer to see if I could come in training. And we had a couple of conversations. Obviously, from the level that I was playing, it was a little bit touch and go whether it would happen. But thankfully, he gave me the opportunity to come in and train for 2 weeks during pre-season, and I'd done well. Obviously, got myself the contract, and then yeah, I'd say since I've been down here, there's nothing that I can say is a bad word. There's the people at the club are brilliant. Everyone from coaching staff to everyone behind the scenes are so welcoming. I felt like I was a signed player even when I was on trial, which was a very weird feeling. And even now, I feel like, although I'm a couple of hours away from home, that I'm home. In a sense, I don't feel like I want to rush home at any point at all. So I'm really enjoying life down here. Everyone's brilliant. The area's brilliant. It's nice when the weather's like how it has been today, and you can go down to the sea. It's not something you can do in London, but listen, I'm loving life. It's obviously we've had a brilliant start, so it's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. And obviously you've got your own worth, but you must be incredibly grateful to Gary for giving you that opportunity to get back into the professional game. It's an incredible opportunity that he gave you, and the amount of trust that he placed in you.
Yeah, 100%. For him to even have me in on trial for 2 weeks was like one of, if not the biggest opportunity I've ever had in football. It's a lifeline back into the professional game, and not many people get that. So without the gaffer, I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you.
It's an incredible story. It's got to be said. And well, we'll move on to a little bit about obviously the start to the season. And I just wanted to touch on the incredible sort of trio that you formed in midfield with Ryan Trevitt and Tom Carroll. You seem to be dominating possession in pretty much every game that you're playing this season. I asked this same question to Ryan when he came on last episode, but you all arrived in the summer, but you've all managed to gel so quickly. It looked like a trio that have been playing together for maybe 3 years. How have you managed to do that so quickly?
I just think we're all sort of maybe away from football, been brought up in the same sort of way. We've all got, I say we're similar personalities. Obviously, we're different personalities, but I think we all have the same morals off the pitch, and we've actually got quite a strong relationship in the change room and away from football. So I think that helps when it does come to a Saturday or a Tuesday. Obviously, watching Trevor and Tom play is nice to watch, but it's even better when I'm on the pitch and playing with them. So listen, I'm enjoying every moment, and those two boys, they're flying at the moment. So long may it continue.
And you've been at the club for a couple of months, like Ryan and Tom, and I think you've all made yourselves fan favourites already at SJP this season. That winning goal, though, against Reading just a couple of weeks ago, it must be the highlight of your time here so far. And I can just imagine the emotions that were running through your head after getting back into the professional game and then scoring a winner against... a Reading team who were in the Championship last season. It must be an incredible feeling.
Yeah, it didn't really hit me at the time. Obviously, when I scored, I was buzzing. I didn't even realise the time of the game. I knew obviously it was late on, but after the game, it still didn't sink in when I got into the change room. Everyone was asking me, "Oh, like what a strike!" And I said, "I can't remember it." I said, "It's just fallen to me, and I've hit it." It was only until I got home and I spoke to like my parents, I spoke to my brother, and I spoke to a couple of mates, and they were like, "Do you actually realise like what you've done?" And I said, "Yeah, thinking about it, it's actually quite a big thing compared to where I was last season, playing in front of 150 people, and the big bank's probably 10 times that size. So it's like to score my first goal and it to be at SJP in front of the big bank was like a fantastic feeling."
It's incredible. I can only imagine what it feels like. It's a bit of a dream of mine to score in front of the big bank, so you certainly accomplished that. When Gary brought you into the club then, he told supporters that you're a bit of a set-piece specialist. And I think it's fair to say that we've seen that so far. But I think it's also fair to say that I think City struggled from set-pieces last season. I was there at Fratton Park when City suffered the frustration of not scoring from 9 first-half corner kicks. But so far, the team have looked so different from set-piece scenarios, scoring from a few of them already. You must take enormous pride in being a key cog in that set-piece machine.
Yeah, it's something that I try and pride myself on set pieces. I think it's one of those aspects of my game that I think is quite strong. So I enjoy taking them. Obviously, I haven't really had any free kicks yet that I can try and score, but with the corners, we worked very hard pre-season defending and attacking set pieces. So I think that's started to show in the games. Although we probably haven't scored as many as we'd liked, I think one day they'll hopefully start flying in.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. You've certainly made a huge contribution already. And let's hope so on Saturday as well. City face Leyton Orient up next. They're a side who haven't started the season particularly well, but they're a good footballing side who, a bit like Exeter, like to play football on the floor. Are you preparing for a different sort of battle for this one? Maybe less physical and more technical?
Yeah, listen, we go into all games fully focused, fully intent to go and get the 3 points, whether they play long, whether they're a team that likes to keep the ball. We'll go through it in our analysis during the week to see what their strengths and weaknesses are and where we can catch them out. But listen, it's so early on in the season that, yeah, they might not have had a good start, but teams always turn it around with 5-6 games in, so you never know how they could be on the day.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good point. And I suppose from that, I mean, Exeter have obviously started extremely well. Say it quietly, but we are top of the league, of course. And I know it's early days, but do you feel confident about what the rest of the season has in store? And do you think the momentum you've brought from the opening games will sort of lead into a better run and maybe establish yourself in a position that maybe you didn't even expect at the start of the season?
Yeah, I feel like obviously we've had a very, very good start. We've picked up a good amount of points. I feel like we could have probably picked up more, and I think in the group we all know that in games that we have won, we probably should and could be doing better. I think there's still loads of room for improvement where we can get better and do things differently. But we're a new team. Obviously, there's a lot of new bodies in the building from last year, so I think we're still getting that gel together. But listen, we've got a great team spirit. The change room's brilliant. So hopefully we just keep going out Saturdays, Tuesdays and getting those 3 points and stay near the top of the table.
Amazing. Well, let's hope that continues. And well, on Saturday, let's hope you can get that first free kick goal of the season. Thanks so much for joining me. Cheers, Reece. Thank you so much.
That's all right. No worries.
I told you you'd like that one. Now it's time to get the lowdown on Leyton Orient. From Steve Nussbaum, the host of the Orient Outlook podcast. Let's have a little hear what he had to say ahead of our clash with Leyton Orient on Saturday. Steve, welcome to Park Life. Great to have you with us. Leyton Orient were, like many other promoted sides, always likely to find the step up to League One a bit of a challenge. The O's haven't had a great start to the campaign, collecting just 4 points from their opening 6 games. How do you reflect on the start of your first season back in League One?
I think it's fair to say, Tom, it's been a difficult start to life in League One for the O's. I think the fixture list could have been kinder. I think you look at the first 4 fixtures for us: Charlton away, Portsmouth at home, Wycombe away, and Blackpool away is a pretty difficult start for any team, let alone a newly promoted team. So we all kind of looked at the fixture list and went, right, if we can take a couple of points from those first 4 games, we'd be quite happy. Those 4 games came and win. We actually played well in most of those games. We lost narrowly away to Charlton 1-0. We were quite unlucky in that one, actually. And then we just got obliterated by Portsmouth in the second half and lost 4-0 and defended really poorly in that game. And then we went to Wycombe, who were also in a bit of a forerunner form, gave them a good game, but just conceded the most sloppy goals in defence and ended up losing that one 3-2. And then we went to Blackpool, a bit deflated, I would say, after the back of 3 straight defeats, and actually played really well. Unlucky not to win that game and got a 0-0 draw out of that. And then we ended up playing Cambridge after that, which was the first game we looked at on paper and went, actually, Cambridge at home is a game we expect to win as Orient fans. And that Saturday, we were unbelievable. We were brilliant. Probably the best singular performance I've seen from Orient side in the last couple of years. Like, wow. Each man played their position perfectly. The movement was amazing. The decision making, the ball retention and movement was fantastic. And that was a really good performance and fairly comfortable against a good Cambridge side who started the season well. And everyone was really uplifted. And then you looked at the next fixture, which was Stevenage at home, the team who were down there in League Two with us last season, the team who we finished above. And everyone was quite confident. And the Stevenage game, they just absolutely tore us apart. Tactically, work ethic on the pitch. They just had the beating of us in all areas. When we tried to pass along the floor, they had a high press. When we tried to go long, they won everything in the air. And it was quite a difficult 3-0 to take, but a fully deserved one. So as we sit here, the performances have been quite good, but performances aren't what get you points necessarily. And I think we need to concentrate more on doing the ugly stuff better with a bit more League One experience. The team's really young, so that team who beat Cambridge has got an average age of like 22.4 years, and that's the same team who were beaten by men in effect of Stevenage. I think Steve Evans has called it men against boys, and a lot of fans think it was almost men against boys. So I think as long as we can wise up, I think we'll be fine this season. We've got a lot of injuries. We've got a lot of suspensions. Exeter's probably one of the places where we wouldn't want to go to this weekend, bearing in mind of what I've just spoken about in terms of injuries and suspensions. But so far, performance is good. But the point, what we've made or haven't made in points is the most concerning aspect.
It's a bit of a contrast to last season where you had a great campaign last season, of course. And I think you did do the hard stuff well and also played good football whilst doing it from my perspective. Let's take a little bit of a step back and talk about last season, because it was an amazing campaign for the O's. I don't think many people expected Orient to have the season they had last year. At the end of the 2021-22 season, it's fair to say that Orient looked like a fairly mediocre League Two side, and by the end of the following season, they became an unstoppable force. It looked like they were more than prepared for League One football. Last season must have felt so sweet considering where the club have come from. Obviously bring that forward to this season and you've got the perspective. But last season was an amazing campaign and you must be proud of Orient's achievements.
Oh, unbelievable. I think we hadn't won like an EFL title since 1971. So it's the first time in my lifetime I'd ever seen an Orient team win an EFL title. And Richie Wellington's come in just before the start of that season, so he basically steadied the ship, so to speak. We appointed Kenny Jackett 2 seasons ago, and everyone thought, right, this is the big turning point, this is it. And a lot of players went and players came in, and we were all optimistic. That season didn't go very well. Then Wellington came in the February before last season. We saw a real improvement in performances. So I think Orient fans were quite optimistic. We made some really good signings over the summer. So George Moncur came in from Hull City, which we all thought was a massive coup to get him down from the Championship into League Two. We had also signed Theo Archibald, who we'd had on loan the previous season from Lincoln. We'd seen some good loan signings. Idris El Mizzouni in particular from Ipswich was an absolute revelation, and a player who we've got back for this season. And everyone last season just played their part in every game. And we had Paul Smith, who's now gone to QPR. He scored some absolutely unbelievable goals. So some games we won due to individual pieces of brilliance. Some games we won due to just being better than the other team. But we had that balance last year, which is a very special and a very hard thing to capture. And we've obviously lost Paul Smith. We've also lost Lawrence Vigouroux, who was our goalkeeper for 3 seasons. We all thought he'd go on to the Championship. He's actually gone on to Premier League Burnley. So an amazing move for him. So we had some real talent in that squad, and we had a real ethic. And Richie Welling's done a great job in uniting the fan base and getting the players on side. But yeah, we saw some amazing football, and every time you saw an Orient team go out last season, you never got the feeling they were going to lose. You felt, at worst case scenario, the team might nick a draw against us, but we outworked other teams. As I say, we just were better than the other teams. You could tell when our team was being named against the other team's lineup. You kind of looked at all the individual battles all over the pitch and went, yeah, we should win this quite comfortably. And for most of those games, we actually did. It was actually pretty undramatic, so to speak. Like, we won 9 out of the first 10 pretty convincingly, and then from that phase, we never really looked back, and it was never a case of if we get automatic promotion. It was just a case of, okay, when that gets confirmed, can we win the league? And we won it pretty comfortably, really. I mean, one of the best moments from last season, we went to Gillingham away late on in the season. We lost 2-0. There was a blackout. Omar Beckles got sent off after 15 minutes, but that was the night where we sealed promotion. And that was like an amazing night, amazing memories there. Then the week after that, we had Crewe at home. And again, not a vintage performance, but we saw the game out, won that game, and that's where we won the league. So we had the Crewe game, and the week after, we had the Stockport game. So within 10 days, we had kind of 3 games where we had pitch invasions, drama, celebrations, and that was before the season had even ended. There were still like 3 games left after all that. So yeah, an amazing season, memories made forever. And I think you got to give kudos to Richie Wellens for leading the team and revitalising the club. You got to give kudos to Martin Ling, the director of football. You give a massive kudos to the board who bought a National League club in 2018, 2019, and in the space of 6 years have had 2 promotions and got us back to, I think, where most Orient fans see the club, as a League One club, hopefully pushing for Championship football at some point. So amazing season. Yeah, I feel like we're back where we belong and where we deserve to be.
Yeah, completely rejuvenated, I would say, from an outsider's perspective.
Yeah.
It's great to see, really, from a club that have suffered in the past, to say the least, particularly when you were down in the National League, when you got relegated from League Two. I think many were worrying about the future of Orient, but it's great to see you back up into the Football League and now into League One, which is an amazing achievement. That brings me on quite nicely to the game on Saturday then. Exeter City versus Leyton Orient. It's, on paper, looks like a really good game, I think. What are you expecting from the O's when they head to St James Park on Saturday?
I'm hopefully expecting a team who are a bit more wise, I guess, to the challenge of Exeter. So we all know Exeter had a great start to the season, top of the league. We always know Exeter play decent football from what we've experienced against the club over the last few seasons. But I'll be expecting Richie to name probably a more League One savvy team. So I'd expect players like Darren Prattley maybe to come back in midfield, more of the experienced heads to a turn, maybe Joe Pigott to start as the number 9. So on Saturday, we had Shaq Ford, a young loanee, lead the line against Stevenage, and he done really well in his debut against Cambridge and scored a goal. But I'd expect a bit more experience to come in. So Rob Hunt maybe to come back in at right back, Omar Beckles to come in at centre back, Prattley to come in midfield, Pigott's coming up front. A few more, maybe what you would call uglier players who know the game a bit more, maybe to slow the Exeter game down, maybe to give them a few nudges here and there, maybe what the younger players aren't doing at the moment. So I'd expect us to probably try and hold as tight as we can and try and catch Exeter on the break at some point, because when we can get the ball on the floor and passing around, we're a very good footballing side. I think we have difficulty against the teams who come at us and lump the ball forward. I think if Exeter try and set themselves up to play football on the ground, I think that might actually play into our hands a bit more than the team like Stevenage, who bypass the midfield and just launch up long and then just all attack in droves, which, you know, it's worked well for them so far, so fair play to them. But I think when teams try and play football against us, that generally tends to work better for us. So I'm hoping Exeter to come and try and play passing football against us, because that might work quite well for us.
We'll see. I'm very much looking forward to the challenge. Steve, thank you so much for joining us on Park Live. Great to have your insight on the O's.
Brilliant. Tom, thanks for inviting us, and best of luck to Exeter for the season. Exeter, great football club, do things the right way, and I hope you have the best season apart from on Saturday and when you visit Picillo.
Likewise. Thanks so much, Steve. Cheers.
Nice one.
Last but not least, as the Exeter City Supporters Trust celebrates 20 years of fan ownership, I spoke to newly appointed director Julen Beer about the role the trust has played in the stability and success of Exeter City Football Club. Julen, welcome to Park Life. Thanks so much for joining us. This week, Exeter City Football Club celebrates 20 years of Supporter Trust ownership. It's an incredible milestone, which seems pretty inconceivable, really, at the start of 2003 when the club was in real danger, going out of existence.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, Tom. Yeah, I've spoken to numerous people, numerous members who joined from the very start. The majority of them say that the main thing that they were focused on was making sure they had a football club to carry on supporting for various reasons, because that was the community and their family that they built. That was where they would take their son to matches or their daughters to matches. That the reason was to make sure that Exeter City still existed. And I think it's the same for my dad. I don't think any of them genuinely thought that we would end up owning the football club. And those that did probably didn't think it would happen as quickly as it ended up happening. I think it was originally something that the trust had thought about, but much, much longer term than what it ended up happening. But circumstances dictated that it had to happen when it happened. And well, here we are.
Yeah, it's now a long and successful project in many ways. It feels like a really good time, the perfect time really, to reflect on the ownership model that has served our club so well. First, it achieved survival right at the start, 2003, then stability, going through the Tisdale years and all that. Resilience during the pandemic was so crucial. Eventually, even promotion and the successes that have come with that. Look at this season, incredible. What is it about the supporter ownership model that really makes this club so successful?
I think there's two main things. I think that throughout the entirety of the 20 years that the trust has owned the football club, that the two core themes that have sort of held true all the way through. I think the very first one is a long-term approach to the strategic running of the football club. From the very start, you have the maintaining of the academy, keeping it open to ensure that future talented prospects in the area would carry on thriving, and being able to play in the first team and supplementing the first team and the financial advantages that you gain from that, not just from player transfers, which eventually did happen, but also from reduced wages that from these players. But that goes from the very start all the way through to how we've spent some of that transfer income. So, for example, with Matt Grimes, you have the 4G pitch at the Cliff Hill with the Ollie Watkins money and the trust guarantee. You have the Cliff Hill training ground, and it's that core theme has gone all the way through the 20 years, and that's one of the biggest things. But and I urge anyone who's listening to go and watch Sandy's video that's been put out today of the 20 years of the trust. The one other thing that you can see is brilliant people who have been able to execute that strategy all the way through. You go back to the very start with Julian Tagg keeping the academy going, Dave Treharne, Ian Huxham, all of these brilliant people that started everything going, all of the working parties. I've seen videos of Elaine painting railings at the training ground, and many people clearing out rubble. It's brilliant people from the very start, and it's continued all the way through people like Denise Watts, Martin Weiler, so many people that, I mean, I can't name all of them. And it's a core theme that's all the way through. We've had very good people at the right times to be able to execute that long-term planning. And it carries on today with people like Gary Caldwell and Marcus Flitcroft, for example, in the first team side of it. But there's also people behind the scenes that are also excellent at making sure that we keep on going, thinking long-term and thriving long-term.
I suppose it is testament to all of those people down the years who have put time and effort and often money into this football club. The supporter ownership model encompasses hundreds, thousands of small owners, I suppose. And I suppose that really highlights the community feel around Exeter City, which I suppose isn't necessarily always the case when it comes to other clubs in the Football League.
I think the ownership model lends itself to a lot of goodwill from our own fan base, but I think another big thing is that it's not that you have all of the great goodwill from the fans. I mean, I've dedicated countless hours, but that's nothing compared to what some people have dedicated. Some people have dedicated their entire lives. You look at people like John Lee with what he used to do with the old training ground. You look at Elaine Davis, who's dedicated decades to the football club. There's so many, and there's many. I mean, I'm not even covering. There's so many people that it's hard to. You don't want to miss anyone out because there's so many great people that have dedicated so much time but it's also the people that we've brought in from outside that have bought into this. You look at people like Eamon Dolan, like without him, we couldn't have, like without his buy-in at the very beginning, he technically comes in as an outsider to the whole model. And the subsequent people that we've had at all different levels, like you have from managers like Paul Tisdale to Matt Taylor to now Gary Calder, their buy-in to the football club is phenomenal. And I think the model lends itself to that as well. It's something that people want to be associated with.
It's an incredible model. And I mentioned that I suppose some other clubs in the Football League might not have that. We've seen many clubs suffer under owners that have maybe mismanaged their football clubs in recent years. How much do you value the stability that comes with trust ownership? Because I think that it's the one thing that drives the club forward more than anything else, that stability.
I think it's easy to overlook how important it is, but also easy to forget how hard fought it was. The trust has evolved so much to get to the point where we're at now. So you go from the just becoming the saviors of the club and keeping things going to having a true voice on the club board through parity in 2014 after a few changes were made. And then you go all the way to the club trust agreement that dictates what the relationship between the trust and the club board is like. That stability has been earned. It's not been something that's just come out of anywhere. It's been hard fought for, and it's a huge advantage above other clubs. I think what it guards against is a lot of volatility. Maybe at other clubs, decisions are made much more rashly and emotionally. Our model doesn't lend itself to that. It sort of gives you that a bit of pause, a bit of respite, and then a more long-term thinking strategy. And I think that it all works in itself together very well. It all lends into that long-term planning. The model lends itself to work like that.
It certainly does. And I suppose it's worth noting, really, that the trust obviously battled very hard to gain control of the club, if that's the best way of putting it. But it's not been plain sailing for the Supporters Trust. It's had to deal with major shocks, including the 2008 financial crisis, relegation, the COVID pandemic, managerial changes. I could go on. But the club always seems to find a way through. And I suppose that's testament to the hard work and effective decision-making, perhaps more than anything, of those at the top of the trust.
I agree. I think it's not only a credit to those who made the decisions that got us to be able to get through those crises very well. I think it's also a testament to the fans and the members that have confidence in the trust board and the people that are elected to be able to manage these situations. But I think COVID encapsulates the benefits of all of the long-term planning that came into place before it. It's easy to say, oh, we dealt with the COVID crisis very well, but it's all of the building blocks that led to us being able to deal with it effectively. You have the keeping the academy open all the way back in 2003. That leads to selling a player when we're not doing too well with the PFA loan in 2014, and the decisions that come from that, and the changes that came from that. For example, keeping certain cash reserves in order to be able to ensure that we can pay players so that we're not in the same situation again. And it all leads to, when we get to COVID, for example, everyone's going to have a smaller budget because no one's got crowds, but we've got the cash reserves to be able to deal with it. We also have the very good fortune and the good timing of getting more money from Ollie Watkins, which makes sure that we have more than enough money to cover anything that happens at the time. But we also have, at the same time, a batch of players from the academy, your Joel Randalls, your Josh Keys, Matt Jay finally gets his opportunity, Alex Hartridge, Archie Collins. There's this very good, talented group of players comes through at the same time. And whilst the timing is lucky that Ollie Watkins gets sold to Aston Villa, that these players all happen to come through at the same time, the decisions that lead to these players coming through, to that money coming in, isn't luck. That's all comes from the decisions that come from beforehand. And I think that's the real testament, and that's where you can see the hard work that goes into it, and the benefits of thinking that more long term. And I think, yeah, it is testament to all of the decisions that come beforehand, and it shows how important it is to keep on looking at things like that.
If I go back to between 2017 and 2021, not only did the club have to deal with the COVID pandemic during that era, but also the 3 playoff final defeats, which I suppose many clubs wouldn't necessarily be able to bounce back from. after 1, even 2, but 3 playoff finals, 3 pushes for promotion, yet still being able to, I don't know what you'd say, but to just come back together and go for another promotion push, eventually successful. I think that says so much about the stability, the resilience of the Supporters Trust.
The 20 years of the trust is encapsulated brilliantly in those 3 playoff final defeats. It's despite getting knocked down, we keep on getting back up.
The bounce back ability, if you like.
Yeah, that bounce back ability is there. We're not going. The long-term plan is always to keep on progressing. There's a few setbacks don't stop you, and you might get to League One and come back down again like we did in 2010, 2012. But the long-term plan is to keep on progressing. I think we do. It's very good credit. It's credit to all of the people that and all the hard work that came into it that we were able to brush off such defeats and such lows of losing playoff finals the way we did some of them as well. To be able to just bounce back and carry on and keep pushing as if it hadn't happened. It's testament to especially the players and the managers at the time.
And then I can come on to the present, and the last 2 years in particular have brought some of the greatest success to the club in recent history. Promotion from League Two, the appointment of an excellently chosen manager, comfortable survival in League One, and well, it's too early to say what's going to happen this year, but it's looking pretty good so far. The trust in the present looks like it's managing the club really well, and then looking towards the future as well, looking to sustain itself as a League One football club. Do you think the club is well on their way to achieving that goal?
I think there's still a lot of work to do, and there's definitely can't rest on your laurels. I would say we're talking about the last 2 years. Are we closer to being a sustainable League One club today than we were 2 years ago? Absolutely, without a doubt. The attendances are on the way up. The feel-good factor is there, and it's not just from the promotion and it's not dropped off after the promotion. There's still something that's continuing, and people are still wanting to come back. And you've got the advantage now with Gary, who wants to play in a certain way that's fantastic to watch. Even if we were losing games, you'd still want to be there and watching the football that we're playing, because it's exciting to watch. We're very, very good. Some of the football we're playing is probably the best I've ever seen as JP. I'm sure there are people that have seen slightly better football, those that are more veteran than I am. But yeah, we're on our way, but there's certainly a lot more work to be done and a lot more areas to explore. But it's a big challenge to become a sustainable League One club. But I mean, at present, yeah.
And that leads
fantastic. And we can start to dream about the Championship maybe now.
We
can dream about it, but yeah, I think sustainability in League One is the primary. Let's walk before we can run.
That leads me on very nicely to my final question, a bit of a cheeky one. Where do you see the club in 5 years' time?
It's a difficult one. I don't want to get for you to have a soundbite for life of me saying, "Oh yeah, we'll be just a mediocre League One side. We'll be happy with sustainability, and we're fighting for promotion to the Premier League because Gary's brilliant." Or because yeah. So I don't want to come out with a soundbite like that. But for me, what I want to see in the next 5 years is that progress towards being a sustainable League One team. We've got the players, and the first team that can sustain a League One team. But that's through a lot of hard work and a lot of talented people at the club being able to produce that with the resources available. What we now need to do, and what I want to see, is steps towards further revenue generating facilities at SJP or beyond if necessary. And well, not within 5 years, that's for sure, but beyond. But also steps towards an improved training facility at the Cliff Hill and an improved academy. Those would be the things that I'd want to see in the next 5 years.
Yeah, the trust remains to be an innovative, adaptive ownership model, which is only bringing more success to the club. Julen, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and your knowledge has been much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. The pleasure's all mine.
That's all for this episode of Park Life, the official Exeter City podcast. Let us know what you want to hear more of via our social media channels, and don't forget to hit the follow button so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening. Up the City.
Into the penalty area. Joski needs a decent ball in! And Exeter City with Sam Nombe! Sops down to his ankle, picks out Stansfield!